Welcome to the first episode of 5YT. Quick 5-minute videos about what I learned on YouTube, mainly focusing on musical theory tips that I can use in my own compositions. The first channel I would like to talk about is called Hack Music Theory. I can't remember the exact episode, but they were talking about 3 types of drum fills. In my own music, I've always struggled with how to write drum fills and drum builds. There are 3 different types of builds and fills that I would like to analyze here. This first example has a theoretical verse that builds into a chorus. I would also like to note that for the drums, I use Native Instruments, Abbey Road's 1980s drummer. And I would also like to note that these examples were built very quickly. If they were actually parts of songs that I was going to professionally produce and show to the world, I would take a lot more time with them. But I do hope these examples are good enough to get the point across. And also to get your creative juices flowing to create your own original drum fills and drum builds. Getting back to this first example, it simply has a drum fill that builds directly into the chorus. Example 1. Oh, by the way, the chords in the verse are A minor, E minor, G, D sus4 to D. And the chords in the chorus are B major, E major with a G sharp bass. I think you call this a first inversion. Then the next chord is E flat minor, and then finally it's D flat. Also, I would like to play the chords alone for 1 second. I would like to show how the last chord comes in just a little bit early. I'm just going to talk over this to illustrate the point. Here we go. First chord, second chord, third chord, and the early chord. I guess you could say this adds a little bit of syncopation to the chord progression. And of course syncopation means highlighting an offbeat. This next example has a build, then it pauses, and then it breaks right into the main chorus. I really like this method because I don't do it a lot in my own music. And Hack Music Theory gave me the idea to try this out in my own music. Example 2. You can see in this image how I increase the velocity of the kick and the snare. It's important to keep the groove going as much as possible. I would also like to note that I use Logic's step editor to easily create velocity curves. Then I go in and manually adjust all the MIDI data inside the piano roll using the pointer tool. In the next example, I have the chorus going back into the verse. This drum fill goes over the bar line. By that I mean it plays over the last part of the chorus and over the beginning part of the verse. Unlike the other 2 examples, you wouldn't want to use this type of fill to build from a verse into a chorus, but it's a good way to transition from a section of high energy to slightly lower energy. Conceptually, I really struggle with this. By that I mean integrating it into my own music, but I really want to hone my skills at this and improve it for future projects. By the way, on an interesting side note, if you want to hear an example of a drum fill that goes over the bar line, listen to Rush's Closer to the Heart. At the very end of the song, as it's fading out, you can hear a really good example of this. Closer to the heart. I say closer to the heart. Yeah, closer to the heart. Yeah, closer to your heart. Eventually, I do want to be able to program drums like this using the computer, but it is very hard unless you have a real drummer. Example 3. I would also like to note that I referenced the circle of fifths to write this chorus. I wanted to write a brighter chorus, so if you go clockwise on the circle of fifths, it gets brighter, and if you go counterclockwise, it gets darker. I had to write a new part to transition into, and this part has the following chords: F sharp minor, C sharp minor, E major, B sus4 going to B. Getting back to analyzing the fill, you can see in this image here how I tried to keep the fill perfectly symmetrical. And that's the end of the first episode of 5YT. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I plan to make more episodes in the future.